Hey y'all, it's April. Warning, there's spoilers in this episode. So if you haven't seen AMC's Interview with the Vampire, episode 1, just beware. See you guys in a minute. Bye.
This is going to be your best podcast ever.
Epicurean. But OFC and pink lemonade's pretty damn good. It'll put your boat in the marsh. Jesus did not die so you could eat yellow number 5. Excitable.
The nose starts off gentle with noticeable scents of grain that takes shape in the form of fresh baked bread.
Ma'am, you're in the wrong podcast. Educated-ish. I have used the term overproof for so long without really knowing what it
constitutes.
Because for
Is
me,
there a definition officially?
welcome to Bitches and Bourbon. Theoretically, here we go. Oh, yes. And we're live. Hello, Bitches in Bourbon Universe. It is April and
Reba.
It is so glad to be with you guys this evening. We're going to do something a little different. This is new. And I think you've kind of come to expect that from us. So you've been with us while we've opened different bottles of whiskey. If you listened to one of the last episodes, you were with us when we opened our very first bottle of tequila for the show, the Herradura Legend.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Delicious.
We've had a couple of episodes that we have posted where we have shared some of the readings from our book club, Books with Bitches in Bourbon. Now, tonight, because I am completely obsessed, I have hoodwinked Reba into doing this Interview with the Vampire series.
Yes,
with me.
completely hooked. Completely. I'm like, bitch, I got so much shit to do. And here we are.
I'm like, please do this with me. Please do this with me. And she was like, fine, but I haven't read the book.
So I did start it.
Did you?
Yes.
And?
Yes. I'm enjoying it.
How far into the first book are you?
Past what I've seen on the series.
Okay, so what we...
Because I've only seen the first 2 episodes so far.
But you haven't read any of the other books.
No.
Okay, so like this is your
No.
first...
Other than the 94 movie.
Okay.
I did see the 94 movie. And
That movie sucked.
And it was not one that I'm like, oh, it's on, I got to watch it again.
I know.
No, like, yes. So, I'm completely on board with the, yeah.
Right?
Not so much in that. So far, what I've seen and read with the book and the new series, I'm enjoying both of them. The biggest thing that I'm having a difficult time with
Right?
is, like, in the book, the interviewer
Right?
is this young guy.
Yes.
And in the series, is definitively not.
Right. So that's one...
That's one... And the skin complexion, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Because, they emphasize how pale and white his face is in the book.
Right.
And that's not so much what you see in the series, but I get it.
So I love that you brought all of that up.
Sorry.
Because, no, that's perfect.
May have jumped the gun.
No, that's absolutely perfect because for episode 1 of the series, it's a great time to kind of talk about the artistic liberties that Rollin Jones took
Yes.
with the books to make the series.
Yes.
So the difference between Reba and I when we come to this Interview with a Vampire thing is Lestat is the first fictional character I ever fell in love with. I was
Not from this book.
No.
Yes.
I was 17 years old. The year was 1994, and the book was Tale of a Body Thief. So I didn't even know Interview with a Vampire was a thing. The movie wasn't out yet. I had never read any of the books. So that was my first introduction to Anne Rice's vampires and to Lestat, and I immediately fell in love with him. A couple of months later, Interview with a Vampire comes out, and I absolutely hated the movie. I thought the movie was absolutely atrocious. But Anne Rice loved it.
Yes.
That's fine. I get it. I respect it. That's the author. What I think is that the background for the original Interview with a Vampire is this, and I'll go through it really quickly just to give everybody a little update about what I know. So Anne Rice was born in 1941 to a staunch Irish Catholic family. She didn't, her birth name is Howard Allen, and she hated that. Go
I
figure.
can't imagine.
Go figure.
Because, she would think that Howard Allen is
Howard Allen.
not really
Yeah,
quite
she
the
didn't-
name you would grow up with.
She didn't really like that. So she kind of changed it herself when she first started to go to school. Anywho, fast forward, she marries Stan Rice. They have a daughter named Michelle. At the age of 6, Michelle dies from leukemia. This happens right before Anne Rice takes a short story that she had written and turns it into Interview with a Vampire.
Wow.
So, what I'm thinking is that when Anne came to Lestat, he was probably cancer for her.
Yeah.
Right? Like he was
Yes.
probably that life taker. Right? And I'm because
Some explanation.
right.
Yes.
Because there's no denying that Claudia, who is a 5-year-old now vampire
Yes.
in the book, not the series, in the book, Claudia is 5. There's no mistaking that has to be Michelle, right? That has to be her daughter.
Right.
So when Anne Rice comes to Lestat, I think she's coming to him from a different place than I was, because I met him 4 books later. He's a much older, capable, different kind of vampire in Tale of the Body Thief than he is in Interview with a Vampire. So I get why she loves it. Fine for her. That's amazing.
Right.
Not my jam.
No.
Not my jam.
I agree.
But it's amazing that you talk about the differences right in the beginnings for somebody who's never read the book before and is coming to this brand new series that just debuted on AMC Plus on October 2nd.
Yeah, like I'm pretty much being introduced to both of them at the same time.
Right. So what happened, what Roland Jones decided to do was he decided to take the original premise of Interview and change it. So instead of it being like the late 1700s and Louis is a white plantation owner, now it is the early 1900s and Louis is an African American pimp in the red light district of New Orleans. So those are like the 2 major changes he made right off the bat.
Yeah.
In Interview, Louis is obviously at a point in his vampire life where he is still completely disgusted with Lestat. The year the original Interview took place was 1973. So Daniel Malloy was a young reporter in his early 20s, right? And Louis was doing this interview with him. The premise of the series is now in 2022, at the height of the pandemic, Louis now lives in Dubai, and he has contacted Daniel Malloy to redo the interviews, because once he went back and listened to them, he realized that he came from a place that he was still very angry, and the interviewer was still a super young boy who really had no way of conducting an appropriate interview. So it's a do-over, so to speak.
I like that perspective of do-over.
I do too.
Yeah, like I feel like it makes a whole lot more sense.
I absolutely do.
Because I don't know that crossed my mind at all
Right?
when I initially set the path to introducing myself to both of them at the same time.
Yes.
I did not think of it as a do-over in the one scenario versus the other.
Right. And that's not, I mean, and they've made a couple of changes, and we'll kind of get to that. But so episode 1 is titled In the Throes of Increasing Wonder. And in case you were curious at all about how completely obsessed I am with this new series, I've watched the episodes that I've seen already twice. And the second time I watch it, I have a little notebook where, and my husband just looks at me and he laughs. And I don't care. The show has been so good.
Wait. So
I'll go ahead and tell you that when I first went to watch the show, it was free on Amazon. The first episode was free on Amazon Prime, right?
Yes.
And so I looked at my husband and I said, the 1994 movie sucked.
yes,
I love the books. I cannot be brokenhearted like that again. And I'm damn sure not going to pay to be brokenhearted like that again.
Correct.
So I will watch the first episode for free
Yes.
on Amazon Prime.
and then go from there.
And then I'll make decisions.
Yes.
Oh, I subscribed to AMC Plus that night. Like, as soon
So,
as episode 1 was over, I was like, I'm all the way in.
Did you by chance see the comment before you?
I
stated
did.
That? Okay,
I did.
Okay, because I was gonna say that was perfect because they were like, I'm very hesitant because like, are you saying if you love the book, you should give the series a try? Most definitely.
Yes.
Especially with with now, like, you're hearing for the first time, because this is the first time we've ever started doing a recording while we're also live.
On TikTok, yes.
Live on TikTok, yes. And so it's just perfect timing because, you know, if I enjoyed the books, are you saying I should give this a try? And yes, like I said, I started, my first introduction was the 94 movie.
Right.
And like I said, I was not overly impressed. I'm like, oh, it's on, I gotta watch it. Like, I've been ready to see the next and hear the next and read the next in both, like, the actual book and the series.
Right.
You know.
And I'll tell you, if you haven't taken the 45 minutes to an hour to watch the behind the scenes episode that they did. So after every episode, they have a small behind the scenes snippet. But what they also have is a full length episode of nothing but like interviews and behind the scenes. And I think the thing that I liked the most about it was getting to hear Roland Jones, who's the creative writer for the show, talk about the respect he brought to Anne Rice's full body of work.
Yes.
To where he did not take Lestat, or any of the characters really, but especially Lestat. He did not take Lestat as a singular character in this interview with a vampire book. He took the body of work to the full character that Lestat is,
expanded it, right?
Yeah, but what it does is it brings an amazing insight that he brought into Louis and Lestat's relationship in the series. Because what's happening is if you read Interview with a Vampire, Louis hates him.
Yes.
But the truth is when you get further into everything, they love each other. They've always loved each other.
It was
right?
just something that was completely new
He was
and
salty.
different. And
he was salty.
Yes.
He was completely salty. But they've always loved each other. And so what Roland Jones has done is he's taken the fullness of all the knowledge, time warped it up, and then retold the story.
Yes.
And it's absolutely beautiful.
And when you think about it in that perspective of like the time warp scenario, a lot of things make a whole lot more sense. Like when you're
Yes.
thinking about being introduced to the both of them at the same time.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I didn't love about the 1994 movie.
Yes.
Is because when I came to the movie, I had read 4 of them. I'd read Interview, Vampire Lestat, Queen of the Damned, and Tale of the Body Thief. Like, so I knew all of the players. I knew all of the history. And so to watch these characters portrayed on screen this way, it just didn't seem authentic to me. Like, I'm like, you have this...
and that makes sense.
Brad-
Like when I think back just to the beginning part of the movie and just the beginning portions that I've heard of part 1 of the book, it makes a huge it doesn't seem the same. I don't know.
No, I absolutely agree, because what they've done is they've taken the fullness of the relationships and told the story. As a matter of fact, I think it's in episode 2 or 3, and I won't go too deep into it because we will do future episodes of a podcast about those episodes. But Daniel Malloy asks Louis about that. He's like, in our first interview, you said these things that said Lestat sucked.
Yes.
But now you're telling me that he does say this too. Louis says, Lestat was my coal fire. And I was just swooned. Absolutely swooned. Like, it was beautiful. So I appreciate that now that they're doing the do-over, that now it's 2022.
Yes.
And so Louis has this whole body of work. Roland Jones has this whole body of work. And now we're bringing this whole different relationship to the screen. And of course, there are things that are different. There's obviously things that are different. Daniel says, because Daniel Malloy, instead of being a 20-year-old kid, is now a 60-something-year-old journalist suffering from Parkinson's, which changes the whole idea of being in a room with a vampire.
Yes.
Immensely.
Yes.
Especially,
your mindset on about all aspects have changed at this point.
especially when you take into account in the book, in the Interview with the Vampire book, one of the last things that happen is Louis has laid out this whole story of his struggle and his strife and like how much he hates being a vampire. And Daniel looks at him and says, "Oh, I want that too." And Louis loses his shit and bites him to try to scare him, and then realizes this is not how I want to live my life. And then they're done.
Yes.
But like Daniel has already been bitten. He's already been assaulted by this vampire, but now they're in the same room.
Yes.
But of course, this is a whole different jam for him now, because he's 60-something years old and he has Parkinson's.
Yes.
Right? Which is very interesting if you read...
On both ends of it is kind of interesting.
Of course it is, especially if you've read the other books, because you know of David Talbot from the Talamasca. You won't yet. You will when you read the other books. But you have David Talamasca, who's in The Tale of the Body Thief, who is this old guy that works in the Talamasca, great friends of Lestat, ends up having to switch bodies, so now he's in the body of a young man, and then he becomes a vampire. Like, it's so super cool. Like, it's so amazing. So when you already know, like, what the possibilities are.
Right.
And so you have this 5-year-old vampire in the books.
Yeah.
And now in the series, and look, I am on TikTok Live recording this, and so for TikTok, I think it's most important that I say this to you.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of videos going on right now about just the disgrace that Roland Jones has done, making Claudia, casting Bailey Bass, who is 19 years old, as a child that's supposed to be 5. Full stop.
Yes.
Do some homework, like pay attention.
Appreciate the
Yeah,
agedness.
If the fact that Daniel Malloy is 60 instead of 20, and that Louis is black instead of white, doesn't clue you in to there's some differences that are in the book.
I'm waiting to see if there's a warning sign.
Claudia is one of them too. So in the book, when they turn Claudia into a vampire, she is 5-6 years old. They find her next to her dead mother. In the series, Roland Jones has decided to make Claudia 14 years old.
Thank you.
Thus casting a 19-year-old Bailey Bass in the role, right? So now Claudia is 14 years old. And Roland Jones, remember that episode that I told you about the back-the-scenes stuff that you should probably go watch? Mm-hmm. Roland Jones does a great job of explaining why he chose to do these things. He really wanted to kind of dive into, because in the book, it is very interesting to see a 5-year-old vampire who is 5 years old when she's changed, so her body stays 5.
As a 5.
But after 20 years of being a vampire, age-wise, she's now 25 years old.
Still looking like a 5-year-old.
And she still looks fine.
Yeah. That's disturbing.
What in the book it's very disturbing.
Yeah.
In the movie,
that's what I'm saying.
In the movie it's ludicrous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
Because if you're going to do that and you're going to keep Claudia as 5,
right,
don't cast a 14-year-old Kirsten Dunst and make her do weird shit. Like, just like figure it out, or do what Roland Jones did and age her up to make it appropriate.
Yeah. And I guess that allows for even more appreciation with, let me try to wrap my head around this. Is it because, so did they do that because of the age? It has nothing to do with the regathering.
No, he talks about it. Roland Jones actually talks about this choice a pretty good bit.
Okay, I had not seen that yet.
You absolutely
I haven't
have
seen
to.
that
It's
yet.
so good. You
The
absolutely
husband
have
was
to.
like, yeah, I'm not interested, so we didn't go there yet.
You absolutely have to. It is so good. So what Roland Jones talks about, so they did not want to cast a 5 or 6 year old actress.
Yes.
And they filmed most of the series in New Orleans. Obviously, there are regulations about how long actresses and actors of a certain age can work. He really wanted to hire an older actress. And Roland Jones thought that it would be very interesting to kind of explore a child that has been made a vampire who is on the cusp
Of
of adulthood.
Yes.
Right? So instead
It's
of
more
having
acceptable.
of having a 5-year-old kid run around,
Yes, it's more acceptable.
you've got a 14-year-old girl that when her body is still 14, but after 6 years of being a vampire, she's actually 20.
Right.
Maybe she could pass as 20
Yes.
with the right makeup and with the right clothes, and she's got this adolescent
Right.
stuff going on.
It does make a big difference.
It was a super smart choice.
Yeah.
I'm really loving everything they're doing with this show. I'm hesitant to talk about like the other content that is being put out, because what I haven't seen yet, and the reason I really wanted to do this is because I haven't seen anybody else like me putting content out there about this show. So even the official podcast, even the person hosting the official AMC Interview with a Vampire podcast, admits that her first introduction into vampires was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, wow. It's a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
Yes.
It's a huge, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just
Right.
saying
It's a different perspective.
Like I Am Legend, Matheson, Like, that's not where I came to vampires. Shelley was not the first time I read vampires. Like,
Right.
so, I mean, yes, me too. Like, I came to vampires at Rice when there was like 300 years of written vampire lore and probably 2,000 years of different types of vampire lore going on, right? But it wasn't Buffy. Like, and it damn sure wasn't Twilight, right? Like,
Yes,
there's no
no.
sparkly, like, if you're looking for sparkly, I'm sorry. You have to understand, like, if you're going to hang out with us with this interview with the vampire series, there's one thing Anne Rice is one of my favorite authors ever. The vampire series, I've read damn near everything she's ever written. The vampire series, the Mayfair Witches, the erotica that she wrote, the fictionalization of a young Jesus Christ. So that's where I come from. I come from a deep love of Anne Rice's vampire lore. Like, for me, and I actually said it to Morgan because Morgan wanted to watch it, and I let her because I had already seen it. And then she was talking about how the retelling was different from the book. And I told her, I said, this retelling is really, really smart. This is how literature gets turned into canon, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is how literature becomes canonical. When people take a body of work that has created an entire universe and an entire way of being for a sect of creatures, this is how it becomes canon. And it's just absolutely fantastic. I have all of these notes here, and I feel like episode 1, we've kind of done like everything that was beautiful about episode 1.
It was interesting listening to the scenario or reading about the scenario where his brother died
Yes.
and seeing it in the series.
And it was different.
very different.
Mm-hmm.
That part was very interesting to me.
I kind of liked Paul.
Which way did you like better, the book version or the series version?
I don't know that I can do that.
Well-
I think that what I'm doing is I am going, this is my Anne Rice,
Okay.
and this is my appreciation of Roland Jones's recreation of Anne Rice.
Okay. So from the perspective of introducing myself to both of them at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the picturing, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
of the scenario seemed to make more sense in the series than the book.
Yeah, because that whole thing was different.
Yes. I mean,
Yes.
but like reading it in the book and then watching how they did it in the series just seemed more natural, if you will.
That's one of the things that I think is very interesting about the do-over aspect, the way that they've couched the whole thing as a do-over. Because
Yeah.
in the book, we don't get a lot of interaction with Louis's family. Like, we don't get a whole lot of who he is as a human.
Yes.
Right? Before he becomes vampire.
No.
In the series, we get a whole ton of who Louis is as a person. In the first episode, when Louis shows up at the church after his brother's funeral,
Yes.
and he is just beside himself, and he goes into the confessional with Father Matheson, and Father's like, calm down, and Louis's like, I'm a liar, I'm a sinner, I take women and I abuse them, and I'm a drunk, and I run because I'm a coward. And when he just
Let's it all.
he just explodes himself
Yes.
inside of this confessional, you get a better idea of who Louis is as a person than you really ever got in the book.
Right.
And I will tell you, that's what I did not like about the 1994 movie. There was a passion and a strength in Louis that Brad Pitt completely overlooked.
I agree.
Completely overlooked.
Yes.
Brad Pitt turned Louis into a fucking emo vampire, and I was just disgusted by it. And with Lestat, Tom Cruise traded abject arrogance for any hint of pre-vampiric brokenness.
Yes.
Right? And so there was nothing there. Like there was no depth to Tom Cruise's portrayal.
There were no true connections.
Agreed.
Being made.
Completely agreed.
Like, it was all just what develops, but there was no preconceived
yes
expectation of, which seems very different from the series.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and then, so, and because we're on TikTok, I feel compelled to, like, address some of the content that's going on out there. One, please understand the way the time shift works and some of the creative changes that Roland Jones has made in order to time warp
Yes.
what's going on here. Two, like, if scene representation of two men loving each other is good for you, fantastic. But let's please not forget that Anne Rice was always a revolutionary.
Yes.
Like, she was, like, Anne
She
Rice
was always putting out there what wasn't necessarily acceptable at the time.
Correct.
Yes.
Like, Anne Rice was always a rebel. She was always a revolutionary.
Yes.
Just because Anne Rice wasn't 2022 woke in 1976
Yes.
does not make her less than.
Yes.
Right? She gave a sensuality and an open sexuality to her vampires
Yes.
from day one.
Yep.
That's what they always were. That's what she always gave them. If she didn't do it politically correct, or if she didn't do it in a way that it suits our 2022 palates, can we please remember that she was writing it in 1976?
Yeah.
And give her a little grace for what she did do.
Yeah.
For, like, because it really irritates me when people take art, remove it from their context, and then bash it.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to take art, remove it from its context, and then appreciate it for where you are and where it is right now,
Right.
fine.
Right.
But if you're going to take art and remove it from its context and then beat the shit out of it, you're just a bully at that
Yeah.
point. Like,
Shame on you.
shame on you. Shame on you. You can't expect people to act outside of the fringes of their norm.
Yeah.
Because Anne Rice was already on the fringes
Yes.
of her norm.
She was already that puppet.
Have we read Sleeping Beauty, anybody? Let's
Yes.
read Anne Rice's Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
And tell me she
You will
was
have
not...
a whole other perspective.
It's great for an anniversary gift. Like, buy it for your spouse for an anniversary. It's certain to get things moving. So those are the kind of things that I really love, because there was a scene in the first episode when Louis's family insists that Lestat come to dinner. And so Lestat comes to dinner and Paul starts what Paul does.
Yes.
With, like, you know, what's your relationship with Jesus and are you the devil, and what's the nature of your relationship with my brother?
Right.
When Lestat has his fill and does what
I've heard
Lestat
enough.
does,
Yes.
Louis had his fill and told Lestat, shut up, you're not doing this with my family. And that was a power that Louis always had that Brad Pitt never brought to the screen.
I agree.
Right?
Yes.
And Lestat demurred to him because he loves him, which was something Tom Cruise did not bring
Right.
to the screen.
Yes.
And so those are the
I
kinds
will
of things.
cave because of my love for you.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
And
It was a big difference.
those are the things that I think the series brings to light. If you've never done anything but seen the movie, or
Yes.
if you've never done anything but read Interview, if that's the only book you've ever read,
Yeah.
the fullness of who these characters are and their relationships with each other. And honestly, you haven't met Armand. And you really, really, yeah, you really, really should. You really should. Like, Armand for 2 seconds was like, April. He did. I'm in the middle of reading the book, and Armand just comes out of the pages. And Armand is like, April, I know you and Lestat got this thing. But really.
You should reconsider.
Armand's like, but really. Have you looked at me lately? Like, have we discussed it yet? Like, maybe you should think about it. And I was like, oh, Armand. I swooned. And I appreciated it. And then I went straight back to Lestat. But I thought about it. But I absolutely thought about it. Absolutely. Absolutely thought about it. But if you haven't read the whole, and that's what I like about what Roland Jones has done, and he talks about it extensively in that behind the scenes episode. He has taken the characters as a whole, as he should, because it's a 2022 interview, which means everything that Anne Rice ever wrote, we all know.
Yes.
The fullness of the characters are there. They're not revealing anything out of time.
Right.
Right?
They're just putting it in another perspective.
Because they've already had it.
Yes.
Right? So
I appreciate.
That's one of the things that I love about the way the time movement works. Because now everything that Anne knew, everything that Anne did, everything that the characters did, and all of that body of work, Roland Jones gets to know.
Yes.
None of it is anachronistic, right? None of it's anachronistic. Like all of those feelings, all of those emotions, we can know all of those things.
Right.
And it's fine because it's 2022 and all of that stuff is in the past anyway. And I just love that. I love all of it.
It's definitely an appreciation for, like, when you're trying to do this kind of thing of kind of comparing.
At the end of episode 1, and I'm really, like, it's episode 4.
Spoiler!
Episode 4 comes on today. So
I can only see 3.
That's fine.
But
that's fine. Even still, it's not episode 1.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about being current. It's the first time in 5, like since American Idol season 2, that I've been current on a show. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
Yes.
Probably my favorite part of episode 1, unfortunately, was in the church when all of that terrible stuff that should never happen in a church happens. But Lestat is trying to bring Louis back to him, and Lestat says, "What rage you must feel while you choke on your sorrow."
Wow.
What rage you must feel while you choke on your sorrow. Like, that is what the 1994 movie did not have. Like, those kinds of things are the things that the movie didn't have. It is the reason why I decided to watch episode 2. It is the reason why I will pay money on AMC Plus to watch the episodes a week early and not be angry. It's the reason we decided to kind of get on here, go live, and do this with you guys.
Yes.
Watch it. You love it?
Yep.
You ready to come back and talk about season 2?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, not season 2, episode 2.
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
All right. Anything
ready.
else?
No, ma'am. We
Mwah.
got it.
Love you.
Good night.
Thanks for hanging out with Ape and Reba on this episode of Bitches and Bourbon.
Make sure to check out the links in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Until next time, here's to bad bitches and good bourbon. Cheers.